Well, these days, the threats and the stresses we face day to day are very different to those that our ancestors faced thousands of years ago. Modern life now not often sees most of us interacting with apex predators on the day to day. While some of those stresses aren't there, some of those primordial responses remain even while you're hanging out the washing or planning a wedding, driving through traffic or folding washing, things that are fairly menial, really. Why does our stress response still go to that of our times and ancestors gone by? Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens. Why does a deadline sometimes feel like we're being chased by a lion?
It can very much feel that way, and I think it resonates for all of us. Those moments come along. So what we know is that our brains have really evolved to deal with threats, and particularly so physical threats. But what's happened with our modern life is we have all sorts of threats, deadlines, difficult conversations and emails, financial pressure, all of the things that can happen to us. But our body doesn't differentiate between the two. So it still activates that same survival response, even though there isn't actually a lion in the room.
Yeah, apex predators, less of an issue these days, but sometimes we do still have that same stress reaction. What actually happens inside of our body when we do get stressed?
Yeah, I think what happens initially is our brain notices it, first of all, when it's not a physical thing, so it's not a snake on the path or something like that. So when that email comes through or that deadline approaches, the brain will actually detect the threat. It'll say something is happening here that we need to pay attention to, and it'll set off an alarm. And what that alarm does for us is it sets off a whole chain reaction of physical responses that our body will have. So there'll be adrenaline and there'll be an increase in our cortisol. We might notice that our heart starts beating a little bit faster, feel the blood pressure start to rise. And so what happens is our body is preparing us to deal with a physical challenge when, in fact, for many of us, it's less of a physical challenge and more of a mental or a psychological one.
And that physical response can affect the way that we think, though.
Yeah, it can. And I think that's what happens. And if people have noticed this, you might find that when you're under stress, it's almost like your thinking becomes a bit more narrow in its approach. We put the mental blinkers on, if you like. So sometimes then we lose some of our ability to plan and see some of the subtle things that are happening, and we get more focused on the threat. We become more emotionally reactive. So it's almost like everything narrows for us, which, of course, sometimes we need the bigger picture to help us get through the scenario.
It's all very interesting to think about what and how we do and how we respond in those stressful situations. Why does modern stress seem to stick around for so long?
I think because it doesn't go away. That if the thing is the email, then, and if you're, as many people do, checking your emails quite regularly, it's almost like it's not just the emails that come in, but it's the anticipation of what else might come through. So what happens is over time we start to associate our computer or our phone or our unfinished tasks as almost a threat themselves, because they're the things that deliver the threat. So the alarm just keeps getting triggered constantly through the day, which is very different to what happens to us when there's a physical risk, because we normally deal with a thing and then the physiological response will come down, usually not long after it. But with some of these constant stresses through the day, it makes sense that we deal with the constant physical effects of those.
Dr. Jo Lukens, is there something that we can do to calm our body, calm our mind first, so that we are able to see the big picture and make good decisions?
Yeah, there's lots of things that we can do. Interestingly, and probably not surprisingly, one of the first strategies that we can use is a physical one, because if we think about it, it's often a physical activation, and then some of the psychological things will come along for the ride as well. So what I will always do is I start with just a breath. And I know that sounds obvious because we're breathing all of the time, but it's a very deliberate one where I will actually quickly inhale twice through the nose and then just take a really long, slow exhalation through the mouth. And sometimes it's that slowing, it's that steadying. And I think the other reason that helps is you've actually realised that you are under a stress. So if we realise it, then we can do something about it. It's when we don't pay attention to it, we don't notice the cortisol rising, and that continues to happen through the day. And that's why we sometimes can really struggle, because we haven't got to it when it was an early warning sign and we're dealing with the later consequences.
What about if the stress is coming from our thoughts rather than what is surely happening?
Yes, which is very much something that makes sense to us at 2 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? So you're lying there, it's not because you've been dealing with the physical stresses, it's because of a thought has come to revisit you and keeping you awake. So I think one of the things that can be helpful there is to try and separate the facts from the stories that we're telling ourselves. So if we think about the bigger picture and we panic and we worry about it, if I don't do this well, I'm going to, lose my job, bring it back to what are actually the facts, because that's just a story that I'm telling myself. The facts are that I've got 2 projects to finish tomorrow and I've got a tricky conversation to have with someone. That's what I need to actually do tomorrow, as opposed to that bigger picture and doom casting, if that's what I feel like I want to call it, anticipating that things are going to go wrong. Yeah.
What's the biggest thing you'd like people to remember about stress?
Yeah, so I think recognising that when those physical symptoms come along, even though they're not much fun when they happen, that's your body's way of trying to get your attention. It's trying to tell you there's something going on here. Now, if there isn't a physical danger that you need to deal with and you need to deal with quickly, then it's your body's way of saying you're feeling that you're under pressure at the moment. So rather than getting concerned with that so much, it's almost a point of gratitude to our bodies of saying, thanks for pointing this out to me. This means that there's something here I need to do. And I would always start with the breaths and then think, what's important now? What's the thing that I can do right now that's going to help me to resolve this situation? And I think that's sometimes a great place for us to start.
Have a breath, get some context. Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens, thank you very much for your time.
Good to speak with you.